Welcome everybody to our podcast, and today we have Helen and Eva with us, and they're going to be chatting about how the menopause has affected them throughout their lives. How many years have you been together, guys?
18?
Yeah, 18.
18.
Doesn't feel like 18 though, does it?
No, it's 18, yeah.
So when did you realise the menopause first hit? How did it feel, and how was your relationship affected by it?
So obviously this is really sort of, I'm 61, so I'm actually 10 years clear of the menopause. And it's an odd thing really, because the menopause kind of hits just at the point where professionally you're probably having to fire on all cylinders. You've probably got the most responsibility that you'll ever have in your life. And at the same time you're having to go through something that is physically and emotionally quite affecting.
Right.
So, you are perhaps trying to manage some quite of high pressured things when you're not feeling fabulous. So for me, I felt tired, I felt sluggish, I had weight gain, I felt self-questioning and perhaps a bit, insecure about things. And I had some quite sort of high-powered things going on professionally. I was looking after some projects for the Olympics, as well as running the festival that I do every January. So there are lots of things, and we had a house move. So it's odd because actually there were lots of things going on that could have been causes of stress, and you might say, oh, this is why I'm feeling a bit down in the dumps, a bit tired. But actually, looking back on it now, I realise that, a lot of those were menopausal symptoms. Right. Another thing, just to sort of say, that was underlying all of this is when we moved to Brighton, we had new patient checks at the doctor's, and the nurse took a look at me and she said, I'm just going to throw in a thyroid test as well, just to check, because you just don't look quite, as you should. Yeah. And the next day I had a letter from the doctor saying, underactive thyroid, you're going to be on medication for life, here you go. That came as a huge shock, and that was a huge help. So sometimes you don't realise that there are all sorts of underlying issues as well. But in terms of, I think I flew off the handle too much. I remember always looking at the ceiling of our office where I'd lost my rag and thrown a sandwich, and it was a gloopy sandwich, and I then had to get on a chair and clean the office ceiling. So there was kind of like a white patch on the ceiling where I could always look up and think, you really lost it there, girl. So, and I think that's, I think it was a bit shocking for you that I would fly off the handle quite quickly.
Yeah, as you said, I thought because you were working so much and you were commuting a lot, I thought you would have been very, very stressed. So I kind of overlooked the menopause. I didn't even think about it could be the menopause because I'm younger than Helen, I'm 13 years younger. So I just thought she's having a bit of her fuse is quite short at the moment because of the stresses, but obviously there's a lot going on.
It's fair enough, isn't it? And then actually, not having a period suddenly, that came as a huge shock. And even though I hadn't particularly wanted to have children, the fact that you then cannot have children, end of last period, it's sort of sadness as well. There's a sort of bereavement process as well for that. So it was a strangely affecting moment for me, which was about 51, 52 years old. And then I didn't actually have things too badly. I didn't have the night sweats and all of that, but I did have hot flushes and mood swings and that. But it wasn't too bad. And I think also because your mother had been good about telling you about how she felt during the menopause, you'd got more understanding perhaps for me.
I remember when you went through that, I remember that, how my mum was, and there were similarities in the mood swings and in the short fuse and getting angry very quickly. And that kind of was very similar, and I remember that very clearly, my mum, losing the plot very quickly.
So
and
did she actually
angry.
speak to you about what she was going through then at the time? Your mum?
We spoke about it years and years later.
Okay.
when I apologized to my mother about having been a very difficult teenager, and said to me, "That's fine, don't worry." And we spoke about things like that many years later, when I was more grown up. So I do remember that very clearly. I remember my mum in the kitchen getting angry very quickly, and that's quite similar. And I don't know, they would argue more? Maybe
I don't know if we particularly are. I mean, to be honest, it was such a strange, it's almost like I can't really remember that period. It's like under a cloud. So I don't know if we particularly argued, because you were working very long hours in the hospital and doing your nurse's training, and there were all sorts of, it's hard because life is never sort of, straightforward. You're not doing, oh right, this is the period where I'm going to have the menopause, this is a period where I'm going to do things professionally hard or train to be a nurse. Or things are always interwoven, aren't they? So the picture is more complex. So that's what I was saying. It's sort of a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got big responsibilities professionally, and you're having to deal with a hormonal change and all the effects that has on your body and mind. So there's two things together.
I wonder if you didn't have to work, if you had lots of money, obviously you had other stresses, but if you didn't have to work and you didn't have the stresses that most people have, or everyone has in life, how would that look? Just the menopause on its own, isolating that. Does that make sense?
I wonder if it would make it harder because you've got nothing else to distract you. When you're working professionally, where you've got targets to hit, or you've got something that drives you, whereas if you're thrown back on yourself and you've got nothing else to consider, then maybe it fills your available space, as it were, for stress and,
Yeah, I think you're right there. It is a good distraction to have work, because you can keep up the same normality, the same diary, appointments, etc., the same schedule. And work colleagues, because we didn't touch on how they were affected, because you lost it at work, you threw the sandwich on the ceiling. So
nobody else was there, thankfully. It was a Sunday, I was there, we were just there on our own, so it's just, so work colleagues, we're only a team of two for most of the year, so I think my colleague hadn't really clocked it, and I think there is a moment where you're going through and you don't actually want to say to someone, hey, I'm going through the menopause, because it's just a bit too personal, and it's a bit too, you're dealing with it yourself, and you don't particularly want to be talking about it with work colleagues as a male colleague. So I think that there's a certain amount of, not denial, but sort of living a kind of secret life, perhaps. So I didn't really talk about it. It's funny because even with my female friends, we talked about it later, retrospectively, but none of us acknowledged at the time we were going through it. And that's odd, considering that we're all happy to talk about it now. In fact, we all seem to be talking about nothing else. It's just interesting. And now, of course, with bioidentical hormone therapy.
Interesting. Tell us all about that.
It was really. I read an article in The Guardian. It was an interview with Jeanette Winterson, who had gone to the Marion Gluck Clinic in London, and she was talking about having all these tests with the hormones and how much better she felt as a result of this. And I looked at it and I undenied, and I rang the clinic, and I just got put off by the horrendous cost of it all. And I thought, no, it's just a bit beyond what I should be doing for myself. And then years later,
then I went to a workshop, your workshop, Livia, and we had Dr. Xavier talking about my bioidentical hormones, and I thought, oh, we did look at that before, when Helen had a look at this interview, and then I was thinking, I wonder if I'm perimenopausal, because I have been lately, for the last kind of like year or two, feeling like a bit more tired, mood swings, a bit more kind of like tension, a bit lower in mood, a bit harder to keep myself up and going. And I thought, I wonder if that is to do with that. And I spoke to Helen about it. Dr. Xavier was talking about bioidentical hormone. Remember, you were looking at it. So we looked at it again, and we decided to give it a go. So we booked an appointment, and we decided to let's spend our money and let's have a look at this, because obviously, it is affecting it was affecting my life, how I felt. It was really hard to get through the day. So we went and we had some blood tests. My blood tests came as my hormones are in the lower range.
Okay.
So I'm borderline.
Yeah.
So I'm getting there. And obviously I'm symptomatic, so I was having all those symptoms. And the doctor said to me, yes, and it's very good that you came so early, because there's no need to suffer. And she gave me a small dose of all the hormones.
Okay.
They come in a cream pump, and you rub it in your wrist or your clitoris. And after a few weeks now, I do feel a difference. I feel more uplifted. The cloud has
And
lifted.
it's just been 2 weeks.
No, it's been a few weeks. It's been
about 4 or 5
4 or
weeks.
5 weeks.
That's
but-
interesting. It's happened quite quickly though.
Yeah, and the cloud just slowly lifted. And the brain fog is gone, and I feel happy with myself.
Okay.
Better, I think.
It'll be interesting to see if it will have anything to do. I know you're following the food plan, but
As well, yeah.
with the weight loss, you know, because you were starting to feel heavier around your waist, weren't you? So we need to keep an eye on that and see what happens.
I've lost 5 kilos. And
Well, you're eating more than ever, and you've lost.
from my waist. Thank you to lovely Lydia's
Yeah.
food plan and coaching, nutrition coaching. It's amazing. So that will have made a difference as well, I think.
Okay. And so, did you go for the hormone test?
I
as
did.
well?
So I mean, for me, it was a very interesting. It wasn't that I wanted particularly to have HRT, which is effectively what it is, but it's bespoke to the individual. So that wasn't specifically why I went. But before anyone will touch you, you have to have various things done. You have to have a bone scan and a pelvic scan, and you have to have a breast scan. So I'd already had the mammogram done, in fact, so that was all fine. But interesting for me, the DEXA scan, which is the one that's for your bone density, I just thought, I do weight-bearing, load-bearing exercise in the gym. I go to the gym regularly. I walk a lot. I have a healthy diet. I'm not overweight. You would think it would be fine. I have osteoporosis in my spine and in my right hip. I've got osteopenia. So that was a shock, actually, and took a bit of getting used to the idea that actually, you're not indestructible, and that, no matter how good people say you look for your age, inside you cannot lie. Your body is what it is. So in fact, I went straight onto medications for osteoporosis, which it shakes your confidence, because you just weren't planning on being told that you got osteoporosis so young or early. But nevertheless, good to know, because that did explain a lot of lower back pain, which I just thought was muscular. And so now I know what to be careful about. I go back for another DEXA scan in about a year, and I'm hoping that it's been pulled back. But it just means that certain things in the gym, obviously now, whether we go to the gym, it's not shall we, it's you must, because it's so important, that load-bearing exercise now. But not being very careful about bending. Those are the things for my lower back.
So deadlifts and things like that
Deadlifts
really are not recommended.
cannot do,
movements,
no.
but supported
Support.
in
Yes,
the
absolutely.
machines, I suppose. It's
Absolutely, really important. But then, because I think that the doctor was not going to recommend me for any of the therapy, or any of the bioidentical hormones, but because it had revealed the osteoporosis, it actually was a good idea to have some of these hormones coming in. Although, it's a bit divided. Doctors will tell you that actually the alendronic acid that I take once a week and the calcium tablets should do the trick, and that's really the fix for osteoporosis. That actually the hormones can also help support that, particularly a bit of testosterone. So I'm also on the bioidentical.
Okay.
And I feel a little lifted. It's maybe a little bit more irritable, I think, but we'll just wait and see how that balances out with the blood tests. But so we're just moving forwards, as we say.
Well, it's quite interesting that it's brought up other health issues, because
I'm very
it's
grateful.
so thorough with the bone scans.
Well, they will not tempt fate. They won't give you treatment unless they know that you're safe to treat, and then they will monitor you to make sure that there are no adverse effects, as opposed to standard HRT where it's one size fits all, here's the tablet. And we know people feel fabulous, you hear people say they feel wonderful on a standard HRT. So yeah, it feels just a little bit more personalised. And
okay, so if you were to say to people, when you feel the first effects of menopause, do something about it, what would you suggest that they would do? Would you talk to your partner? Would you go to the doctor? Would you go for bios? What would you say from your experience?
I would say first look at your diet. Make sure you're eating the right foods, because what you eat affects your mood, not just your physical health, it affects your mood. So you can do a lot with that in terms of your symptoms. So if you go to the doctor is gonna either treat your symptoms, your depression or your anxiety or your low mood, or they're gonna give you HRT. But you may be able to do a lot with diet and exercise, lifestyle changes, rather than have not a very healthy lifestyle, and then on top of that, treating your symptoms with medication. Some women suffer a lot because it affects some women more than others. If you don't need to struggle through life for the next few years, if you can do something about it. You can go to GP. HRT can help if you can afford it. You're lucky enough to be able to afford it, but identical, obviously, it's more bespoke, it's more individual. So I think it'll be better for you because your levels are not as.
I suppose it's an investment in your health, really.
It is. And once you have the first checks and you get your dose, then the treatment itself is not as expensive as you think. It's just a test at the beginning,
Okay. And would you say very much the same thing, Helena?
I would say the same, although actually I would say that for me, nobody ever said this is the sort of age that you can expect, this is the standard age that you can expect to have the menopause, which is 51, 52. That information didn't seem to be out there then, but it is there now. So I think, ignore that state of denial that you might be in, thinking, oh, is this it, is this not it? I think you can go and get a blood check with your GP about whether this is actually the menopause or whether it's something else. I would absolutely recommend getting a DEXA scan, because just having that baseline for bone density going forward, you have it every couple of years, it's 65 quid, and I think that just knowing how to prevent osteoporosis, because normally you only get the scan for osteoporosis from your GP if you've had a fracture or if there's a history in your family or whatever. So it's not something that you get until you've had a fracture. And that classic Collier's fracture, where the ladies trip on a paving stone, put your hands forwards and end up with a broken wrist or two. You've got osteoporosis. A lot of people get it younger than we think. So my message really would be get tested for osteoporosis. That's a cheap and easily accessible, privately obtainable scan. And then I think if you're really suffering, I think that there's no harm really with investigating, as Eva says, if you're lucky enough to be able to afford bioidentical hormone therapy. It's a really good one. It is expensive. I think probably by the time we come out of it, we'll have spent the best part of £1,500 with all the tests and everything just to get through those initial tests. It gets cheaper then, and then the creams and things cost about £100 a month, if that.
No, about £50 a month.
Oh, okay.
£50. Yeah. So it's just all those initial tests getting you set up.
Okay.
And it depends what you value. I value feeling well, being healthy. So if I don't need to struggle and suffer for years with my mood and the symptoms of the menopause, there's something that I invest my money in.
I mean, the other thing I'd just say, if people smoke and drink a lot, then I would say address those issues, because those things are, putting you at more health risk than HRT in any form, whether it's bioidentical or standard. If you can cut down on alcohol intake and stop smoking, it's a mug's
And one last thing, so relationship-wise, so you're advising couples, what would you say is the most important thing when one of you is feeling down, you've got those symptoms? I guess it would be talk about it. Talk
understanding
Yeah.
why that person is behaving like that,
Yeah.
and it's something that it's not, they're not doing on purpose.
Yeah.
It's something that is related to their body changes and the hormone changes and how they're feeling. And understanding that, just to manage that better.
I think that's right. I think it's just not to react head to head, but to sort of stand side by side with that other person, and sort of ask those questions. I feel that you are I feel that you're angry, or I feel that you're upset, rather than saying, why are you, or being more confrontational. I think it's just sort of getting into the other person's skin a bit.
Explore and understand.
Empathise.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much for
Thank
You're
you.
very
meeting
welcome.
me today and having a chat about the menopause.
Yeah, thank you.
Watch out for my next vlog and next podcast. It's on Live Fit Freedom YouTube channel. Check out, subscribe here, bell notification, and find me on Live Fit Freedom on Insta and Twitter. See you later. Bye.